Paul McGoldrick here from the Robert Emmet 1916 Society. And today, for our third podcast, we have Eamon Keenan and Barry Murray to discuss the thorny question of electoralism and the Socialist Republican struggle for an end to British rule in Ireland and an end to all imperialisms and capitalism, and building for a 32-county sovereign socialist republic. The title of the topic today poses the necessity of revolutionary electoralism, the streets, or both. So let's start with you, Barry. Barry, what is your view on socialist republicans entering elections, north or south?
Sure. We've heard all this before. We'll go into our council chambers or parliaments to put manners on them. And, we'll rack the place and we'll use it as a tactic to change their system. That's all total nonsense, And it's a dangerous political naivety as well,
So, Eamon, do you think we need to avoid electoralism like the plague?
No, I don't think we need to avoid it like the plague. On the contrary, actually. What we do need to do is put it into its proper strategic context. What we have experienced in Ireland in the past in the world of elections has meant keeping those in power who already hold power and increasing their hold on power. There's never actually been a politically radical or revolutionary electoral strategy ever to get rid of a pro-capitalist or colonial system that rules over us, north or south. The recent elections in the 26 counties continues the process of representative parliamentary elections, which is for the benefit of the powerful and the wealthy. That's not for the change. That's not the change for the majority, the poor, the working poor. It's to keep those already in power in their place.
Good point, as there have been many progressive and revolutionary candidates elected, but not to a revolutionary strategy. So, Barry, all political parties talk about change, but what is it they mean by change? Is it an end to inequality and exploitation of the working people, or even an equal distribution of the wealth created?
No, the type of change that the present political parties, north, south, east or west, are talking about is not change at all. It's merely a rearranging of the furniture within the confines of the system to give the illusion of change. It has nothing to do with equality or ending exploitation or empowering people. And certainly not about the proper distribution of the wealth that has always been created by the workers. The very first thing that needs to happen is that the people of Ireland have to come to understand why change is needed and the type of real change that is needed. And secondly, that the people of Ireland themselves come to understand that any real change that will ever happen, especially the type of change that ends their inequality and exploitation, comes from the people themselves. Today's politicians, they loosely use buzzwords about change like inclusiveness, equality for all and diversity, but neither their policies or their actions follow through in this. The present system does not allow for real and proper change, and is designed not to. And why does the present system not allow for real change? Because simply put, profit comes at the expense of the poor and the working poor. And profit is king. And it's clear to all that the living standards are failing, house prices are rocketing, healthcare is collapsing, workers' rights and pay are always restricted, and more often denied, while the wealth and power of the ruling class continues to increase exponentially. The politicians continually call for reform and change, but they only are ever talking about the consequences, and they never talk about the cause, the real cause of our problems. That is the capitalist system we live under. Building the knowledge within the population to build for real change is vital, so as not to get tricked by the usual buzzwords and empty promises.
Some very valid points there, Barry, indeed. Well, Eamon, do you think the population are that easily fooled by such buzzwords and empty promises?
Well, no, Paul. I don't think they're that easily fooled, but the problem is that they know well they've been shafted, but they're trapped by debt and the need to live. And I think what Barry's trying to say is the need is for us activists, along with others, to be continually raising people's awareness, to allow people to become aware of another narrative that explains the cause, for example, of their poverty, which is in fact caused by inequality and exploitation, which is caused by our capitalist economic system. That system needs to make endless and ever-rising profits. Full stop. Bottom line. That's the bottom line. So poverty, by the way, it's not just a word or something that always has or always will be there. It is a clear and underlying and preventable cause. Throughout human history, many have spoken about and identified the underlying cause that those in power like to keep quiet about.
Indeed. and in Ireland, the best known teacher, theorist and man of action from a socialist and republican perspective to show what is necessary to expose, for example, British colonialism, imperialism and capitalism was James Connolly. Indeed, Lenin, using the writings of Marx and Engels on revolutionary electoralism, actually implemented it to build for the successful 1917 October Revolution in Russia. I mean, he actually proved, against all odds, the central importance of radical revolutionary politics and electoralism.
Yes, I suppose Lenin actually spoke very highly of James Connolly and the Irish Citizen Army. And then even, say, Connolly's words of ruling by fooling springs to mind. And by the way, you outlined briefly what radical revolutionary politics and electoralism is, for those of us who possibly never heard of it, or what it might be, or what it means for the people and our ongoing struggle.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. I suppose what you just said there, it might sound, a wee bit academic and dramatic, but the first thing is that radical revolutionary electoralism and its politics, simply put, is the building of localised power, people-powered politics on the ground in every part of Ireland. It's a people-powered democracy, a decentralised democratic system, power from the bottom up, not from the top down, which we currently have. The key aspect comes from radical revolutionary politics, and that is, it's the focus on the cause.
Ah, yes, the cause. Now you're talking.
Yeah, so the cause of why a minority, the powerful and the wealthy, exploits the majority, us, the poor and the working poor. Yeah, it clearly identifies the cause of poverty, as was said earlier, as inequality and exploitation of the people, us, the minority. Whereas the present political system, it always dwells on the consequences of, say, poverty. You've got your homelessness, the lack of proper healthcare. These are the consequences, not the cause. The pro-system politicians, or those who own and control the wealth, never ever speak about the real cause. Neither does the media. Their silence has been bought and sold. The present economic and therefore political system perpetuates inequality and exploitation of the poor and the working poor, and it has done for hundreds of years. We must end this trickery. It is, as you say, Paul, ruling by fooling. On the other end of things, radical revolutionary electoralism and politics is about ending the system which is controlled by the powerful and the wealthy, and in the interests of the powerful and wealthy. So it's a class struggle. It's building for those who support our base. That has to be the bottom line. And if you look at it from a socialist republican position, it's also about ending British colonialism in the 6 counties and the neo-colonial Dublin rule in the 26 counties. It's about ending the imperialist and capitalist system in all of Ireland that rules over us and exploits us, and the building for a 32-county sovereign socialist republic.
A sovereign socialist republic. But right, so everyone is talking about a united Ireland, shared Ireland, or an agreed Ireland. Does that not sound like a new type of Ireland?
No, the agreed Ireland or even the united Ireland tells us nothing. It doesn't tell us what type of Ireland they mean. And again, it's only buzzwords. But if we go back to what we're about, the 32-county Socialist Republic, it clearly states its objectives. It's delivered from the 1916 proclamation, treating all of the children equally and the wealth of the nation for all of the people of Ireland. In my view, the Ireland that our rulers north and south are talking about is an Ireland again for the wealthy at the expense of us, the working class.
I suppose I'd have to agree with you there, Eamon, as I've yet to hear any political party in government as much as utter the words of a socialist republic. But Barry, on to you now. Eamon has alluded above to radical revolutionary politics. Can you give us your view on the current political system, as Eamon has said?
Well, we're talking about two entirely different systems here, and the difference between the present day political system called representative democracy, the one that we all go out and vote for every 5 years or so, and a people-powered, radical and revolutionary political system, is that the present system is designed to keep the rich in power, whereas the radical revolutionary political system is people-powered and about ending inequality and exploitation and their arbitrary control over the working class, that is the business class and the rich, which is our working class, is our support base, and that's where we need to be focused.
Aye, right, but how is this, I suppose, what can I call it, new electoral system a benefit for the struggle from a socialist Republican angle?
Well, let's go back to Connolly for a minute. Connolly was clear, and I paraphrase him: parliaments are but the committees of the rich to manage their affairs. So he had no illusions about electoralism, and neither have we. And we have a very long and very bitter history of involvement in politics in Ireland, coupled with disappointments, sellouts, lies, treachery, perpetrated, I should say, especially by people who claimed to be Republican to this very day. So it's a bitter pill for us to swallow. But so we know that revolutionary building is a bitter struggle and can often be a bitter pill.
Aye, Barry, but would that not close the door then on any kind of involvement in electoralism by present day socialist Republicans?
Well, looking at our past history, you could easily say yes. I mean, in a basic way of thinking. However, that's not the full story, and indeed, it can't ever be the beginning or the end of the topic. We must think tactically, always.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate more on that?
Well, to undermine the grip of power, we have to use and understand the methods of revolutionary electoralism. And it's a two-part tactic at its most basic level. First, in our parliaments, maybe 20% of the elected person's work, just for a figure, should be on your input there in the parliaments, should be about 20%. And the rest of the work is 80% is with the people out in the communities and on the street. And that's, if you can visualise that, that's where the work should be, and that's, we have to be community facing. That's the important bit. And I mean, if the councillors and representatives see themselves as facing the people with their backs to the councils or political chambers, then, it's and it's true for all election levels. It doesn't matter if it's TDs, MLAs, MPs, councillors, it doesn't make any difference.
I suppose that's contrary to what people have become accustomed to. Eamon, from your experience as a former councillor, do you want in there?
Yeah. Just continue on what Barry said. I suppose I was in the council. I was a councillor from Monaghan District Council, and that is what I was practising, the radical revolutionary politics, and what I was trying to do. I was putting the community first, and I was working in the interests only of my community. And I was doing that by challenging those within the representative political system who were continuing to decimate my community through cuts in healthcare, education, workers' rights, and I suppose living standards in general. The way I did this, I did it through various people-powered campaigns, which involved feet in the street with community involvement. There was numerous campaigns we can look back that happened, and also by bringing motions in through the councils from those groups, with decisions they had made that needed to go forward to challenge the status quo, and that's what we did. Feet in the street and motions from the people, and it was seen as a new and different approach here nationally, or here in the local area. Even nationally and internationally. If you look at my attempt to get Cuban doctors into Ireland to boost the shortage of doctors here in the SWA and even GPs, which was almost successful. that we had meetings with the Cubans. The Cubans were going to come, but unfortunately it didn't materialise when I didn't get elected the next round. But at that time, the establishment and the compliant councillors, they knew well, I would say, what I was doing, but they were trying to label me as deliberately disruptive, which it never was, of course. But what it did do is it exposed a continuing desire to have no change in the representative current system.
Yeah, well, of course, the pro-status quo councillors were obviously going to betray your thinking as disruptive. So, Eamon, what's your thoughts now on not getting elected this far on from the elections?
Well, I'm not saying that my approach, that the radical people-powered approach didn't work. It may have been, or is likely to have been, too far ahead of the political consciousness of many people out there. As we know in the North only too well, sectarianism applies the lowest common denominator, and it's well up there. It does destroy class politics. What happens is you vote in the strongest party to keep the other side out, and it just deliberately hides the real inequalities, and it hides the problems in our society, and people buy into it. Better still, it actually ensures that no working class unity ever happens across the board. Therefore, it perpetuates those in power and those in the wealth.
Yeah. Well, Barry, back to you now. So, Barry, how do you think this radical revolutionary electoralism can be carried off?
Well, probably the most important thing is that our key activists need to be clear on what it is we are doing. That's the very first step, and that involves a bit of study and learning around the thing to get to grips with it. Then you need people in local areas organised around the issues that directly affect their lives, particularly the lives of the poor and working poor. And never forget, they are always going to be the majority, and they suffer the highest levels of inequality and exploitation in housing, health, education, and of course as exploited employees. So it's a ready-made base of potential support.
So what does that look like in our communities?
Well, as I said, it means the organising of local people's communities around all social, environmental, political, economic issues that affects people's lives. But crucially, it is linked to the next level, that of the elected local councillors, or more accurately, we would refer to them as facilitators. There are tactical interactions then between the existing system and the newly created localised community councils. And the people in their areas meet to decide and inform their elected representatives at whatever level as to what is needed in their constituency, district, town, or even village. And who knows better than the local people on the ground? That's a demonstration of power from the bottom up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Eamon, are we talking about a real and fair form of democracy here?
Yes, for sure. Certainly, this is a decentralised democracy, or a people-powered democratic system, not just a sham democracy controlled by our rulers. Therefore, it's on the ground where the real politics must take place, not in their parliaments. The decentralised democracy in our communities will be the backbone of revolutionary electoralism. It's futile to have elected councillors without this type of democratic structure around them. What it would also do, it would mean the councillors, TDs, MLAs, who neglect the people's wishes or become part of the status quo, it would mean that they're liable for instant recall by their electorate and to be replaced. That there is real people-powered democracy directed from the bottom up, by the people and for the people.
That sounds good. And where are these elected councillors going to come from?
Well, the key criteria is first of all, they need to fully understand what revolutionary politics and electoralism means, both inside of and outside of the centres of power. They need to be class conscious and come from the working class base, and unequivocally take the side of the working class people, and definitely not be propping up the current system, which is designed to actually not treat the people equally at all. The people outside the council chamber, they need to lead their elected facilitator in the council, and that's the way it has to be. It cannot be based on a vote catching, grandstanding in the council chambers, or opportunistic, things to catch votes. It must have real radical substance that's directed by and for the people. Power from the bottom up, not from the top, or not from the top down. The top down has to end. We have to ensure that the talking shops of the council chambers and parliaments become revolutionary working bodies driven by the people.
Yeah. This is going to be a complete change then in the way politics and electoralism works. But will the average voter understand this as democracy?
Well, it'll be a shock. It will be a shock to most people's understanding of how politics should work. And if there's not a higher level of class consciousness developed among the people, then it'll be more difficult, for people to understand it. And indeed, existing elected politicians, they may well actively work against the people-powered democracy, but we are the backbone for the change factor here, and a very high percentage of people know that the present system, the representative system, is not actually democracy at all. It's nothing even close to it. So we do know that a high percentage of people, and I think it's maybe 40% in the north, and in the 26 counties, that they don't even vote. So that there's a base there that understands the current system isn't democratic. So that's we need to work on that. The procedure that the people normally come out and do is every 4 years to vote to elect the people in the councils and the parliaments on the basis of a load of promises or alleged principles. What happens then is usually they disappear out the window once they enter their buildings, and that's the reality. The present system is designed to ensure, just that. They make the wee promises, elect them every 4 years, and then there's nothing. So you see then is a U-turn or a sellout by those councillors or politicians. So the 40% or the 60% that do vote, will they still be happy to vote if they clearly understood the reality of what passes for democracy here? Never mind the 40% who see no point in voting at all. The other seldom mentioned figure is that how many are not even registered to vote.
Which is 40% of the population not voting. That is quite an astounding figure indeed. And you can understand obviously why people aren't voting. You mentioned they're aiming U-turns and sellouts there. But is that not what it is?
Well, of course it is, but we have activists have to clearly understand exactly the real cause of why that happens. And it's multi-layered effects. In fact, we could do a whole other series of podcasts around this very point in its own. However, we can make a few short, relevant points on some of the causes. Remember, the causes of why elected people get sucked into the parliamentary system and don't fulfil, their electoral promises. Many do actually try, but they're up against a wall. A well-oiled machine that consistently and easily thwarts their efforts as they try to play the game. You cannot win their parliamentary games that have been fixed and rigged in the 200-year-old system that capitalism has established.
Yeah, well, so are many, what you say, well-intentioned, even elected representatives, a bit naive about the reality of how the system actually works?
Well, basically, those who run for election, at least initially, might believe that there'll be a force for change within the parliaments or the councils. Well, that's wrong. They also, in a short while, become a slave to vote catching to get elected the next time round. Again, wrong approach. The clientelistic approach of the representative system and its politics separates people from the reality of the facts of the politics in their lives. It focuses power on the elected rep and it takes it away from the people. In turn, this reinforces the notion that the elected reps own the seat, and it becomes my seat very quickly, when in fact, as we said, it should be the people's seat. All this plays directly into the hands of the representative system, and it's force rungs in the conforming ladder. We have to break out of that mindset. But the majority factor is that 95% of those who get elected have no clear thinking on radical or revolutionary politics in the deepest sense, and even fewer of a good grounding of what decentralised democracy is or its implementation from the bottom up, the people-powered democratic system. So they actually probably have no clue of the necessity of local people's councils or how it would give us the edge that we need and the people the knowledge for solid revolutionary change. Sure, how would they? You know what I mean? Sure, we were never told anything about this, so all we know is the current system, the representative system. Sure, it's the only show in town, as we're told. And it stands a sense that capitalism is never going to educate you how to undermine it. And the meantime, the elected reps, you know, their phones, their emails are going to be hopping mad, and they're just going to do what they can do for their constituents as they see it. But what happens is they'll just burn out, or else they'll just join the system or give up. So none of that's ever going to create the changes necessary to bring about the 32 county social republic to be built, maintained and retained. That is a very important bit for maintaining our gains.
Very good, Eamon. Lots of very solid points there. Right, well, back to you now, Barry, to finish. Why would Socialist Republicans even bother with all that parliamentary stuff? And so not just build our local people's community councils and take to the streets when we need to?
Well, maybe before we get into that, there's something that really needs to be said here, and it's an important point that, you know, we continually need to be looking at ourselves and asking ourselves and each other. And it's this, you know, why are we commemorating, campaigning, protesting, politicking and carrying out education and publicity and so on as socialist Republican activists? You know, what is all our recent 30 years of activities about? You know, and the 30 years of armed struggle before that, and the hundreds of years before that again. You know, I mean, what's it all about if it's not about ending British imperialism, indeed all imperialism, American and EU imperialism, colonialism and neo-colonialism in the 26 counties? I mean, is it the case that after all of that, we're just going to allow the existing pro-system politicians to retake power, walk back into the parliaments and councils, and we just haven't done the donkey work, drift off into the sunset? Is that it? Like, and you know, why would you bother organising, fighting, or dying for that outcome? It's my clear view that we have to be prepared now to be that people-powered socialist Republican government of that 32 county socialist Ireland. You know, or is it the case that we're actually afraid of even talking about the prospect of being in power? Anyway, that's a bit of a diversion. Back to your question.
Right, Barry, right. Yes, okay. So you saying that the end result of what Republicans have been at over the centuries is about achieving the power to build a socialist republic, and to not only build it, but govern it, which is obviously a completely different thing again than just for building it, along with the people. So therefore, are you saying that we all have to understand what that means and its consequences? And I suppose even to begin to build the structures now for that, and part of that is the tactic of using the existing parliaments, along with the already mentioned community councils, as an essential part of doing that.
Well, yes, we could just establish local people's councils and keep doing what we're doing on the streets, as I said above. But you know, if we don't combine it with the electoral part, then we're only preparing the ground and maintaining the stuff for the status quo. You know, we have seen abstentionism on its own over the years, and we have seen electoralism on its own over the years, and neither of them have worked, nor will they. And we have to be honest with ourselves here. Where is the socialist project as of today, after even the last 25 or 30 years? And the thing is, whether we like it or not, people do not see us as the centre of power, or us making the changes for their betterment. And we have to also recognise that the people out there see where power and the source of their money is in the established ruling chambers of power. And that's, just to satisfy their daily needs and wants. I mean, it's vital. even though our analysis is different about where power really lies and must lie, the facts are we don't control the economics or the distribution of the wealth created by the workers. Well, not for now anyway. So we have to use the present electoral system as a platform, as a vehicle, as a means to an end, but definitely not the end itself. And it's a testing ground for our ideas and an ongoing measure of our support. As Engels once said, speaking in parliaments comes with a different authority and freedom. And for us, all the more louder if backed by the local community councils and feet on the street. That's key. However, this all must work in harmony and be coordinated. Our revolutionary electoralism must be fit for purpose. And that purpose is to rupture. That purpose is to rupture the status quo, not perpetuate it. And we don't want British, American or EU imperialisms exploiting us, or indeed their Dublin lackeys either.
The lackeys, exactly, the comprador class who have been shafting the Irish people for generations. But what other tactical benefits to promoting our struggle are there from the radical revolutionary electoral strategy? Eamon?
How about you go for that one, Eamon? Then?
Well, if we are in councils or parliaments, what we can do is we can force all other parties to defend their positions and we can expose them. And when you're in the electoral arena, especially during elections, you can get your message out. And people, whilst people are attracted to the artificial razzmatazz of election and politics, and while it is a circus that hides reality, it can be used tactically and productively, along with the street actions and people's councils. Our job is to demonstrate the reality of people's living and how we need to completely change it to a people power and bottom to people power and bottom up. If you're out there in the public arena and prepared to speak about the revolutionary direction you want to take and exposing the reality of what the parliaments of the rich actually are, what we can also do is urge our local community councils to begin to re-engage the ever-growing percentage of people that doesn't even no longer bothers to vote or isn't even registered to vote.
Very good, Ian. Right, Barry, over to you now. I suppose as we're finishing up here, can you now summarise in the last few seconds what is the main focus of this podcast?
Well, very briefly, the vehicle and the tactic of entering the electoral arena is only a means to an end, not the prize, and definitely not the end goal. But it's only a viable tactic, as I said before, if we adopt the radical revolutionary electoral approach, combined with the building of people-powered democratic councils in our towns and villages and rural areas. We want to take the system's increasingly centralised power out into the local areas so that people have their say. I mean, that's the central part of what we want to do. And we need to get people to begin to focus on make decisions on the needs of their lives, not accepting, what might or might not be given to them. And what they need to be doing is to, question the answers, not just answer questions. Real change, real people power, not just talk. But thinking that going into parliamentary electoralism on its own and playing the system's games will bring about the change we need is folly, and it's outright delusional. And we've literally hundreds, even thousands of years as proof of that. And once again, to paraphrase Lenin, which I think is probably explains the whole thing in one sentence, we must fight for our people's parliaments in a revolutionary way, but not in their parliaments for a revolution. That's it in a nutshell.
Excellent analysis, man, and plenty of food for thought throughout. Great discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.